I will be starting with the scope of microbiology with respect to the distribution of microbes and what role they play in different areas of nature that include the freshwater, the marine ecosystem, or air or soil, and even we will conclude with the extraterrestrial microbes. The first topic will be the freshwater microbiology, which is also called limnology. Now, here I will be mainly limiting my lecture to the different activities that they play, and at the same time what type of disease they cause or the decomposition activity that they carry out. This is a bacteria called Shigella. This is mainly causing a disease of shigellosis, but at the same time they can actually operate a unique system which is called mar operon. And you know, mar operon is something related to mercury. Whenever the concentration of mercury is high in the water, this system of operon or gene will be activated and mercury will be removed. And you know, this high concentration of mercury will activate the regulated gene, and thereby this structural gene downstream will be activated. The moment mercury is transported or mercury is converted to, from +2 to 0 state, that is normally it is the vapor state, then again this system will automatically be switched off by the product of MAR-D. So this system operates in a unique way. It is auto-controlled and thereby mercury concentration can be controlled.
Sir, I would like to ask whether the horizontal transfer of this mar operon help in a population of a bacteria in adaptation to a particular contaminated environment.
Yes, you can see that this particular operon or set of gene is mainly present in the plasmid. So there is an opportunity that the bacteria will show horizontal gene transfer, and thereby this adaptation can spread across. Okay? Now the second activity is the unique algal bloom, which is carried out by different groups of algae. You can see here, this is one of them, the unicellular microcystis, which is a cyanobacteria or blue-green algae. Then there will be the dinoflagellates, and there will be also the diatoms. But altogether they will grow on the water surface and they will reduce the oxygen concentration, and thereby they may actually make the water quite unsuitable for the development of fishes. Another important activity which we see is the common fungal spore. This fungal spore belongs to the group of unicellular fungi like Candida. Whenever we are swimming in a water, in a pond, we can see that there are some skin eruption, and this is mainly due to this Candida infection. And you can see sometimes this Candida infection can be dangerous. It gets into our body and sometimes it will invade the tongue. And especially in case of HIV patient, this particular infection is dangerous because they become immunocompromised. The second important aspect that we are going to cover is the decomposition process. You see, this water body is actually having a huge collection of microbes. Upper ones may be aerobic, lower ones may be anaerobic. But their primary activity is decomposition, that they decompose complex organic substrate to simpler inorganic substances. Eutrophication process in a water body is actually enrichment in minerals. Upper part is enriched with oxygen, and there is a typical pycnocline layer which will not allow the oxygen to percolate below. So naturally these lower organisms are anaerobic bacteria while the upper organisms are aerobic bacteria. And obviously if these nutrients are deposited, then naturally the activity of this bacteria will consume huge amount of oxygen. So automatically the biological oxygen demand increases, as a result of which the fishes or the other aquatic creatures cannot grow properly. So whenever we have some friendly algae in the form of chlorella, they will carry out photosynthesis, and at the same time they will utilize the carbon dioxide and will supply oxygen to the anoxygenic part of the water, as a result of which the fishes and other organisms can survive. The Vibrio cholerae, which is causing the disease of cholera, and typically note here, they have a coma-shaped body and a very long flagella. And this actually will produce a toxin, the cholera toxin, which is causing infection. Perhaps you are aware that the O139 strain actually played an havoc and is causing large number of deaths in the southern part of Asia. The region marked in red, but right now with better techniques known and proper hygienic condition has reduced cholera infection. Now another important aspect is the coliform infection that normally comes from contaminated water. This coliform include a group of bacteria belonging to family Enterobacteriaceae. And one of them is of course the E. coli, which is a very common bacteria, typically growing in a medium producing green metallic sheen, and you know it is the EMB agar, and this coliform will definitely be harmful to human and to other aspects, but again with a particular test we can detect that what is the load of the coliform, and that is commonly called the most probable number. So you know the MPN of a particular water will determine how much pure it is or whether that water is containing any coliform or not. So it is a parameter to test the toxicity of water. It includes all those virus, bacteria, algae, fungi present in the sea and ocean. And obviously the concentration of sodium being so high, they will all be moderate to highly sodium tolerant. One of the important aspect you can see here that the bacteriophage present in Mediterranean Sea, they are responsible for killing bacterial population, as a result of which the water is protected from bacterial infection. That means Mediterranean Sea will have a natural control of bacterial population. Coming to other prokaryotes, there may be different types of bacteria present belonging to different genera, and these bacteria can have different types of activity. They may be involved in degradational activity, or sometimes they may be involved in food chain. One of these bacteria that we see is a colony of Bacillus mycoides. You know, this mass of Bacillus mycoides commonly we find in any sea or ocean close to the coastline. So there is a probability that this Bacillus mycoides perhaps originated in the internal water and has flown with the river or stream with contamination into the sea. And they may actually be a part of the marine environment and gradually becoming tolerant to sodium concentration. Apart from that, there may be other protists.
Sir, I would like to ask a question over
Yes.
here. Can marine microorganisms be pathogenic?
Normally, they are pathogenic to less extent because of the high salt concentration. But there may be some protozoa or bacillus which can be pathogenic, and if they are pathogenic, they are mainly pathogenic to the group of brown algae or red algae growing in the sea. Now we come to some unique organization within the marine environment. You see, there may be different types of protists in the form of diatoms, in the form of dinoflagellates, in the form of ciliates, in the form of radiolarians. There are different forms and they all are unicellular eukaryote. But they have different types of activity. You will see that this particular protist, it is called a mixotrophic protist. Originally, it is a predator, predating upon bacteria. But at the same time, they are having green chlorophyll within them. So they are sort of opportunistic organism. Sometimes they can photosynthesize and they can survive on their own, while at other time they can predate upon other organisms, including bacteria. So that is a unique food chain where there is both autotrophic and heterotrophic organisms. This group of bacteria commonly representing the Synechococcus, which is a common phytoplankton. Now, Synechococcus usually is a bacteria which will decompose the nitrogenous waste produced by the marine animals, including protozoa and other animals. And they are that way involved in decomposition or detritus food chain. But at the same time, there will be photosynthetic activity which include that this particular bacteria is producing food in the ecosystem. And similarly, there may be some other organisms, the dinoflagellates or the diatoms, which are playing a role in the photosynthetic activity because they also have some sort of chlorophyll component. A particular bacteria, whenever it is allowing decomposition and at the same time it is helping in photosynthesis, cannot really produce a simple food chain. So what we actually see is a very complex, well-knit food web where one organism directly depends on the other. That means what? That on one side the protozoa is predating upon bacteria. At the same time they produce the nitrogenous waste which is degraded by bacteria. And at the same time both protozoa and bacteria are photosynthetic. So don't you think this particular food chain is very complex and well knit? So we cannot really explain a simple food chain when we are explaining the decomposition activity of marine microbes.
Okay.
Now, the most important area where we should consider the microbes to be important is the deposition of calcium. So there are different organisms in the form of radiolarians which deposit huge amount of calcium, iodine, magnesium, and that way when we take in the seafood we are getting the supply of this nourishment.
Sir, I would like to ask a question.
Yes.
You talked about Cyanococcus
Okay.
and also Prochlorococcus. They are primary producers in the same marine kind of environment.
Okay.
So can a relationship exist between Cyanococcus and Prochlorococcus?
You see, Cyanococcus and Prochlorococcus both are photosynthetic bacteria acting as phytoplankton on one hand. And at the same time I told you they may be involved in decomposition activity. Cyanococcus may like nitrogen enriched medium and Prochlorococcus may like carbon enriched medium. So obviously when the nitrogen content is more, the Cyanococcus will grow. If the carbon content is more, Prochlorococcus will grow. So we can say there is some sort of antagonism that exists between the two. Soil is the dwelling place of different microorganisms, and that may include virus, bacteria, algae, fungi, protozoa, all of them. It was Winogradsky in 1898 who created the famous Winogradsky column, where he actually showed that different areas of the soil may have different microbial activity. So ultimately all these microbial activity will be helpful towards agriculture, that is human development. Now coming to the plant growth, there may be some microbes which will produce different hormone. Like there is a fungus, Gibberella fujikori, which is actually pathogenic to rice, but when it is invading rice, it is producing the famous hormone of gibberellin, which will allow the rice plant to grow. So in this way, there may be some root associated fungi producing plant growth substances. At the same time, there may be microbes which will be producing different enzymes. Like you see, the cellulose degrading enzymes, cellulolytic enzymes produced by Carvularia, which is a soil-borne fungi. So though it is pathogenic, but at the same time, it will ensure that the proper recycling of carbon substances takes place in the soil. Considering the cellulolytic activity of microbes, there is a very important activity we should now consider, and that is the formation of humus. What is humus? It is a remnant of decomposition of plant and animal body in the soil. It is less porous, having high water holding capacity, but at the same time high amount of humus will make the soil very much acidic. So it may not be suitable for different plants to grow. So when we mix humus with clay and of course sand, then the soil becomes ideal for agricultural system. We already know that microbes take part in sedimentary cycle and also the gaseous cycle. But while participating in the sedimentary cycle, they can reduce complex metallic salts, and thereby you can see salts of copper or salts of iron can be degraded. to relatively simpler compound. And because of this, they have actually taking part in what is called bioleaching. That means microbes will be involved in the purification or reduction of a metallic salt from their ore to the metallic form. And one such organism is the ferrooxidants cell, which is commonly helping in iron leaching. Microbes may act as a very important biocontrol agent. They are the Beauveria or they are the Entomophora. Now what do? They are basically fungi which will invade different insect pest. You can see here the insects are directly invaded by this white mycelia of Beauveria, as a result of which they are killed. Now because this fungi is entering into the alimentary canal or the body of the insect, they are called systemic mycopesticide. If we are fixing nitrogen chemically, then it will require high temperature, high pressure. But you just see a microbe can fix at normal temperature and pressure nitrogen into the soil. And this nitrogen fixation is because of an enzyme nitrogenase. Nitrogen fixation can be mainly of two types, which is the symbiotic nitrogen fixation and also free-living nitrogen fixation. Free-living nitrogen fixation is brought about by a group of organisms commonly called cyanobacteria or blue-green algae. You can see in this slide that the blue-green algae, which is a green filament having a thick-walled heterocyst, this thick-walled heterocyst will operate in such a way that the nitrogenase become active and thereby the nitrogen is converted to ammonia, and then this ammonia is available to the vegetative cell. Okay. And at the same time, this vegetative cell will continue to grow normally with the unique photosynthetic activity. Symbiotic nitrogen fixation can be by the legume along with the rhizobium. The rhizobium will invade the root of legume plant and there will be some set of genes active. They are the nod gene or the NIF gene. The nod gene will allow the nodule to grow, which is a type of cancerous growth in the junction of root, and then the NIF gene will be active, which is like an operon, and will ultimately convert nitrogen to ammonia slowly and steadily.
Sir, how can a photosynthetic oxygenic cyanobacteria overcome the inhibition of the enzyme nitrogenase?
You see, the nitrogen fixation activity in cyanobacteria is limited to heterocyst. The photosynthetic activity is there, but it is negligible. So oxygen generation is very low, and even if it is there, there is only the PS1. So the cyclic photophosphorylation occurs. So oxygen liberation takes place in the non-cyclic photophosphorylation. So because only partially photosynthetic activity is taking place, oxygen generation is not there. So thereby this unique enzyme nitrogenase is protected from the action of oxygen. Whereas in case of the leguminous rhizobium, there the problem is not there because they have a unique pigment which is in the form of leg hemoglobin that actually take away oxygen from the site of the nitrogenase enzyme. And apart from this rhizobium, there may be another group of organism which is commonly symbiotic in nature. There is a unique symbiotic association between the casuarina root and Frankia having nitrogen fixation. But all these processes ultimately enrich the soil with nitrogen and make it more fertile. And you don't have to add any chemical fertilizer. So it is a unique way we can do organic farming. Now when we are applying complicated chemicals in the soil, they have their natural decay. But at the same time, different fungi and bacteria like Thiobacillus, Bacillus, or fungi like Penicillium and Trichoderma, gradually they degrade these pesticides. Now how do they degrade? Mainly they act on the side chain, and slowly and steadily those complex pesticides are converted to simple inorganic substances, and they also sometimes liberate the gases like carbon dioxide or sulfur compounds. So thereby the soil will be free in the long run from the toxicity of the chemical pesticides or fertilizers. In air microbiology, we will mainly consider the composition of air. That is, what is the number of bacteria or fungal spore or viral particle present in the air. So the best way to understand that what are the organisms present in the air, there is a very good experiment which is the exposure plate technique. What you do is you prepare a synthetic medium, take it in a Petri plate after sterilization and just expose it to air for some specific time period. What we will see after incubation for 24 hours, that there will be small colonies growing here. You can see here. So in this 4 Petri plate, it is obvious that this was exposed for less time period, and because the number of colonies were more, obviously that time period was more. This may be one inference. Another inference is that maybe this air in this particular Petri plate was contaminated with greater number of spore. Just by seeing the nature of the colony, we can differentiate what type of colony it is. For a bacteria, it will be discrete opaque colony. For a fungal spore, it will be cottony mass, and for actinomycetes, it will be some burnt skin, irregular appearance. So it is quite easy to understand what is the amount of contamination in air, and there are other methods of sampling air. One such method for biological sampling is the Anderson sampler. You can see here that the air is allowed inside and gradually it goes down through respective chambers, and as it goes down, the heavier particles that is having size greater than 7 micron will be in the upper chambers, while the one which is less than 3 micron will come to the lower grid. So in this way, on the basis of their density, the microbes can easily be separated. So you can very well understand fungal spore which is having bigger size will be limited to the upper grid, and the bacteria which is of smaller size automatically goes down. So simply by placing nutrient plates here, we can separate the microbes present in the air. And you know, this is ideally compared with our own bronchus or trachea, because you know the windpipe is also acting like a Anderson sampler. As the air we breathe in is going through the trachea into the lung, and there will be mucus layer covering the inner lining of trachea. So automatically the bigger spores will not get into the lung, while the smaller ones will directly get into the lung. And these are commonly known as suspended respiratory particulates, and these are definitely harmful for us. So in case of smoker, the suspended particulate matter will contain more respiratory particulate matter, and thereby the efficiency of breathing is reduced in them. When we are living next to the main road, we are using thick curtains. So what is happening, whenever the particulates are entering our room, they get adhered to those curtains and thereby they are precipitated. So following the same principle, we have actually found out a unique device called ESP or electrostatic precipitator, where the air is passing through a negatively charged plate, and as it is passing through this negatively charged plate, the particulates or the smoke particles, they are getting the negative charge, and this negative charge will definitely be adhering to positively charged electrode, as a result of which the air is free of this particulate matter, and thereby the indoor air pollution can be reduced. So this is a way by which we can make our home safe in respect to the air we breathe in. But definitely in case of hospitals, in case of other important laboratories, this air should pass through specific filters which is fitted to the window, and the air normally should not contain any type of particulate matter, whether it is respiratory particulate matter or suspended particulate matter. And these days it is mandatory for all medicine companies that the air handling unit should be very strong, so that the medicines which are prepared inside will be free from all those airborne contaminants. Extraterrestrial microbiology mainly include two things. That is there any life in the form of microbes in any other planet? Maybe it may be Jupiter, it may be Saturn, it may be the moon of Saturn, it may be the Mars. And the other aspect is there any microbe present in the exosphere? Carl Sagan and others, they do believe that there are extraterrestrial polypeptide. There are records that there is a bacteria called Bacillus arjobhatti which was detected in the exosphere, and we in our laboratory have denoted that they are present in the Calcutta wetland. So all these facts definitely suggest that there may be life forms present. But there is a unique structure which is in the form of carbonaceous chondrites. These carbon containing particles, you can see, may have some bacteria-like structure present within them, which indicate that the meteorites might have some bacteria, though we don't know their exact origin, but we can say there may be bacteria present in the exosphere.
Sir, why are carbonaceous meteorites typically susceptible to terrestrial weathering?
You see, they are exposed to all the forces of nature. So following the normal principle of weathering, they will be degraded. They will be exposed to pressure, they will be exposed to air current, and thereby they get degraded. Now, this is a meteorite which is an actual hitting the Antarctic, which is called ALH 84001. You can see the electron microscopic picture. There may be filamentous algal or bacteria-like structure. There may be some zooplankton-like structure, which is commonly belonging to an organism called tardigrades. And these tardigrades or water bears, they are unique because they are the zooplanktons present in the polar region. So definitely this indicate that they have come from some extraterrestrial origin. We have learned today what are the different microbes present in the water body, present in the marine ecosystem, present in the soil, present in the air, and also in the extraterrestrial pathway, how they have come to this earth, and what are the different activities played by them, and thereby that will enrich the scope of microbiology.